So we're going to be in chapter 26 today, and I divided this up into sections, and it fell along pleasant lines to divide it into 4 sections. Now, the first section we'll be covering is 1 through 12, verses 1 through 12 of Proverbs 26. And this is about the foolish fool. Now, all of these things are things that we have covered. Now we're near the end of Proverbs, and so it's almost like a summary, summing it up again. And so the 1 through 12 is about the foolish fool, but we're going to go over, we're going to tumble. One of my kids used that this week in class, and I just loved it. We're going to tumble over there to the New Testament and see what Jesus has to say. And then that's the foolish fool, 1 through 12. 13 through 16 is going to be the slothful sluggard. We've heard of him before, or her. And then 17 through 22 is the meddling meddler. We've heard of them before. And 23 through 28 is going to be that hypocritical hypocrite. And we're going to see in the New Testament the things that Jesus said about all of these things. But I'm going to do something new. I'm going to read in the Amplified. Oh boy, now I guess you do know, there's a classic Amplified, and there is an updated, I guess, a version of it. I don't know what I'm in. And it's looking like I'm going to be crossed in between, back and forth. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how this works out for us. This is not something I normally do. I didn't even bring my expositors. It was a scary moment, but I walked out without it. But I did it. Proverbs chapter 26. We're going to read 1 through 12 first. And I even printed something out here. And this is also amplified. It says, like snow in summer and like rain in harvest. This is the foolish fool. So honor is not fitting for a short-sighted fool. Like the sparrow in her wanderings and like the sparrow in her flying, so the curse without cause does not come, and a light on the undeserving. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the backs of fools who refuse to learn. And we're talking about learning the wisdom of God's word here. Do not answer, nor pretend to agree with the frivolous comments of a closed-minded fool, according to his folly. Otherwise, even you will be like him. Now, the next verse, however, seems to go the opposite direction. So what we're doing, we're covering all bases. There's sometimes you don't even bother with them. You don't even bother to answer or to respond. And then there are other times, I think, answer, verse 5, and correct the erroneous concepts of a fool according to his folly. Otherwise, he will be wise in his own eyes if he thinks you agree with him. And there are times that this is true. You really do have to confront the foolishness of the fool. Now, that's not all the time. Sometimes you just shake it off and roll on. But sometimes it does need to be confronted. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet, sabotages himself, and drinks the violence it brings on him as a consequence. Like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of a fool who cannot learn from its wisdom. Like one who absurdly binds a stone in a sling, making it impossible to throw, so is he who absurdly gives honor to a fool. Like a thorn that goes without being felt into the hand of a drunken man, so is a proverb in the mouth of a fool who remains unaffected by its wisdom. Like a careless archer who shoots arrows wildly, that's the way I do it, and wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool or those who by chance just pass by. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his foolishness. Do you see a man who is unteachable and wise in his own eyes and full of self-conceit. There is more hope for a fool than for him. Now, there are some fools, and these are the foolish fools, because this has eternal consequences. All right, so let's go ahead now. We're going to the teachings of Jesus. We're going to Matthew 25, and we are going to look at, I think we're starting in verse 50. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, it's Matthew 7, I'm sorry. Matthew 7, 24 through 29. Matthew 7, 24 through 29. Okay, now this is a parable of the Sermon on the Mount thing. Anyhow, I know it's parables of Jesus. So everyone who hears these words of mine, Jesus speaking, and acts upon them, if you hear the word and you act upon it, bow your ear to hear the words of the wise. The words that Jesus is speaking are wise. And you apply your heart to understanding, to getting a revelation of understanding of what he's saying, and obeying them will be like a sensible, prudent, practical, wise man who built his house up on the rock. Look, folks, okay, here's what's going on. There is a big old black ant going back and forth across my eye, and he's been there since Friday, and I will go and have that seen to tomorrow. But that's what I'm trying. He's going real fast between my words. So anyhow, so that's what's going on. If you think I can't read, I think I possibly could if he'd leave me alone. Let's see. And it says, a practical, wise man who built his house upon the rock. Now, in verse 25, it says, and the rains fell. We hear that going on. And the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall. Why? Because it had been founded on the rock. We don't fall. I may cry around some. Beverly prayed for me. I said, do you ever just feel like crying? And it's sometimes when we're facing things that we don't know what's going on, a lot of times, especially in our bodies, it's like, this is very scary. It's very scary. But what? We built our house upon what? The rock. The winds are going to come. That's life. The rain's going to fall. That's life. All of these things are going to happen. It happens to the just. It happens to the unjust. It happens. But when our house is built upon the rock of Jesus Christ, here's what we know. Right now, we might be in the middle of whatever, the ant running back and forth in your eyeball. You may be right in the middle of that, and you think, I don't know what's going on. But by faith, I see ahead to the healing that I know was already provided by Jesus at the cross. One price was paid. I show my kids this. One price was paid. All provision was made, and we are founded on the rock of Jesus Christ. So whatever you might be in today, and nobody might be in anything, I don't know. But if you're not, I'm going to tell you something. You have been, you will be. Remember this, you are founded on the rock. We see ahead by faith of where it's going because our foundation is Jesus Christ. We may, right here in the middle of it all, that's when it gets scary because we can't see the steps. But we know that already our steps are orchestrated by Jesus. Orchestrated. So we can go through. And that's the rock, the one found on the rock. And it says then, the next one though, because we're talking about the foolish food. It says, and everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them, those that won't bow their ear to hear the word of the Lord. They will not, or if they do bow their ear and they hear it, they do not apply it to the understanding of the word of the Lord. And so therefore, you know what? It returns null and void because there was no understanding of the word of the Lord, the words of the wise. And it says, and everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like look, here's what the Amplified says, a stupid, foolish man who built his house upon the sand. That kind of rhymes if you leave off the D on stand. A stupid, foolish man. He built his house upon the sand. I don't think there's anyone in here who is a stupid, foolish man or woman who has built your house upon the sand. I don't think so. I don't know. You know. God knows. I don't know. But if they built their house upon the sand, look, the rain fell. Uh-oh, it's raining on them too. The winds are blowing. Well, they live next door. The winds are blowing. The wind blew and beat against that house. And what happened? It fell. It collapsed. And look at this. And great and complete was the fall of it. Great and complete. And look, here, I want to read this because it says, and when Jesus had finished these sayings, the Sermon on the Mount, the crowds were astonished. You know what? I think today people would still be astonished by those few verses that we just read because they do not understand that everyone who lives and breathes and has being, every person that lives and breathes is building a house upon, and it's eternal house. It's one that's going to last forever. And we're building it either upon the rock of Jesus Christ, that immovable, unshakable, never is he going to get shaken. I might cry around and do stuff like that, but he's never going to be immovable or unshakable. He's not going to be. So if we built our house there, it's eternal. As long as we continue building our house there. Can we go away from building our house there and go build it next door with our foolish neighbor? We can do it. He's not going to tie you up. He's going to convict and convince and draw and do all those things to keep that from happening. But in the end, it's our choice. It's an eternal house. Everyone who lives, this is what I felt like the Lord gave me. Everyone who lives, today you are building your house either up on the rock, and for us, that's a spiritual house. That's Jesus Christ. Or you're building it upon the sand. And sand is a shifting sand. It's a shifting sand. Like the sand dunes in some place. And the sands shift. It's shifting sand. And you know what that's an eternal house as well. But in the end, when you take your last breath here and your next breath somewhere, if your house is built upon the sand and it's not built upon Jesus Christ as Savior, as Lord, as orchestrator of your steps, here's what's going to happen. You're going to take that next breath in a place, Sister Francis preached this last Sunday, in a place of hell. It's that simple. But when do you make that choice of what house? You make it right here on this earth. While you're living and walking and living and breathing, you are making your choice on this earth. While you're here, it's an eternal house. Everyone you know, your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, your family, your friends, every one of them is building a house, an eternal home where they're going to dwell. And it's either on Jesus Christ and be with him in heaven, and we're going to read that, or it's going to be hell. And she said this last week about the realness of it. The realness of what those people will go through. It's so urgent, urgent, urgent that we talk and that we live in front of them, but that we talk it too. You can live it, but if you don't talk it, they may just think you're a good person or a nice person. The eternal house is built upon something, someone. If it's built upon Jesus Christ, we're going to be reading that in a little while. But it says that don't be a foolish fool. Proverbs teaches this. The Bible teaches this. Don't be a foolish fool. A foolish fool is the one who builds his house upon the sand. That can be your money. That can be your job. That can be your family. That can be your children. That can be anything that you put ahead of Jesus Christ. That becomes your house. That becomes your house. When you're totally focused on those things and not on Him, that becomes your house. That becomes your eternal home, your eternal dwelling. And so we're going now to move to the slothful sluggard. The slothful sluggard. We've talked about this boy before, and let's look at verses 13 through 16. And this, once again, is the Amplified. The lazy person, the slothful sluggard, who is self-indulgent and relies on lame excuses, says, there is a lion in the road, a lion in the open square, and if I go outside to work, I will be killed. You know, it's kind of stupid, isn't it? I mean, when you get, well, he's a slothful sluggard. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the lazy person on his bed, never getting out of it. The lazy, slothful, self-indulgent person who buries his hand in the dish, that means losing opportunity after opportunity. It wearies him to even bring it back to his mouth. The lazy, sluggard person is wiser in his own eyes than 7 sensible men who can give a discreet answer. Okay, now let us go to what Jesus said in Matthew 25 about this situation. Matthew chapter 25, we're going to begin with verse 15. Chapter 25, verse 15. Let me see if I can zero in on it. 15. Okay, listen to this. To one, well, I'm back at 14. For it is like a man who is about to take a long journey, and he called his servants together, and he entrusted them with his property. Do you know the Lord's entrusted us with his property down here? Y'all know that? I think that's true. He's entrusted us. It's kind of a trust fund, I guess. He's entrusted us with his property down here. Okay, well, that's what we're going to read about. Verse 15 says, to one he gave 5 talents. Now, the Amplified says $5,000, but, you know, I don't know. You know it's Amplified. To another 2, to another 1. To each in proportion to his own personal ability. Now, I think this is God-given ability. God gave some people different talents, gifts, and abilities than he's given others. Guess what one he's going to hold you accountable for the ones that he gave you and you never used. Those are the ones you're held accountable for. I'm not going to be held accountable for what he gave you. Now, there are times that we do whatever needs to be done because it needs to be done. I remember one time I played the piano here because it needed to be done, but after I saw Tara did it better, the Lord says, okay, step aside, girl. No, really, I did feel that. Truly, he didn't say it that way. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them and gained 5 talents more. This was a go-getter. You know what? No, we're going to talk about that. And likewise, he who had received the 2 talents, he also gained 2 talents more. So we see that these used what God had given them for increase in the kingdom. He used what God had given them for increase in the kingdom. And then look at this boy right here, though. It says in verse 18, but he who had received the 1 talent went and dug a hole. I thought that was remarkable that he even bothered to dig a hole. He went and dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. In other words, he had the opportunity. Now, I do not believe that God counted the 5 more than the 2, more than the 1. I think he gave them what he wanted them to have. And all they had to do, and our word that's going to come out in this, is faithful. That's what he wanted. And it says, but he who had received, said, Master, and he who had received the 1 talent, he told his master, he said, now I thought this was a little hard to buy right here. His master said to him, oh, well, let's see what the master says to these others, the 5 and the 2. Every time he says this, his master said to the one who had gained 5 more, well done, well done. You upright, honorable, admirable, but here's what matters, faithful servant. You are a faithful servant. You have been faithful. You have been trustworthy over a little, and I will put you in charge of much. Enter into and share the joy, the delight, the blessedness which your master enjoys. And then verse 22 is about the 2 talents. He came forward and had gained 2 more. And guess what his master said to him? His master said to him, well done, you upright, honorable, and faithful. Faithful. Understand, the key word here is faithful. Faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy. Over a little, I will put you in charge of much. Enter into and share the joy, the delight, the blessedness which your master enjoys. And then in verse 24, he who received the 1 talent also came forward. He had the guts to show up. And he's saying, Master, I knew you to be a harsh and hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you had not winnowed the grain. I knew you to be. Right there it tells you he didn't know the master at all. He didn't know the master. This wasn't the way the master was at all. Now understand this. What he was trying to do is shift the blame. You know, that's what we do. We shift the blame to somebody else. You know, I didn't do it. Okay, well, I would have done it if whatever, if Rose wouldn't have gotten away, I would have done it. We shift the blame to someone else instead of just being man enough or woman enough to say, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. You know, I think even then, God, the master could have blessed him if he would have just admitted truth. He may have given him a chance to do it again. He gives us chance after chance after chance anyhow, doesn't he? But he said, I knew this is the way you were. And so that you did not sow and gather where you had not winnowed the ground. So I was afraid. Look, if he was afraid, what he should have been afraid of is getting his master's face and say that in the first place. What kind of gut guts do you have that you're going to get in someone's face and tell them that when you know good and well it was never true? That's the foolish fool right there. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you can have what is your own. But his master answered him. We're talking about faithful. Now we're talking about unfaithful. And look what unfaithful gets you. It says, but his master answered, you wicked and lazy and idle servant. Did you indeed know? In other words, did you really know? And do you really think I believe that you knew that? I don't buy it. Did you indeed know that I reap where I have not sowed and gather grain where I have not winnowed? Then you should have taken my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received what you was my own with interest. So take the talent away from him and give it to the one who has the many talents. For to every one who is given will more be given, and he will be furnished richly, so that he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have will be taken away. And look, this is the scary part. And look what he says, and throw the good-for-nothing servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Seems like God takes seriously what we do with what he's given. Seems like he has requirements for what he has given and what we do with what has been given to us. It seems like it matters to him. It seems like it matters. This man was unfaithful. The other two were faithful. They were going about doing what the master had told them to do. This person was unfaithful with what he had been given. He was unfaithful with it. And so his end was to be cast into outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. That was the end at that time. That is the next one. And now we're going to talk about the meddling meddler. That's going to begin on verse 17. I think we're going through 22 with this. Verse 17. The meddling meddler, like one who grabs the dog by the ears and is likely to be bitten, is he who, passing by, stops to meddle with a dispute that is none of his what? Business. Do you know people that do that? You can be having a conversation with someone else, has nothing to do with them, and they're going to stop and put in their 2 cents worth that is not worth 2 cents. And they are going to get right in the middle of your business. And it says, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death, this is the meddling meddler. So is the man who deceives his neighbor, his acquaintance, his friend. And then he says, I was just joking. I was just joking. So I got in the middle of stuff. So I got in the middle of your stuff. Oh, I was just joking. For lack of wood and fire, the fire goes out. And where there is no whisperer who gossips, contention quiets down. Like charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a whisperer are a gossip, are like dainty morsels to be greedily eaten. They go down into the innermost chamber of the body to be remembered and mused upon. Now, I'm going to go back to over here to the classic edition, however, and I want to read that verse 22 in our hearing. It says, the words of a whisperer or slanderer are like dainty morsels or words of sport to some, but to others they are like deadly wounds. And they go down into the innermost parts of the body or of the victim's nature. The words that we say, and we say them jokingly, but we don't know what that's doing to that other person. Well, it's usually a lie. Right. Then that makes everything you said okay. Right, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, I'm going to have to pull out of this. I can see that right now. And I was just joking, man. You get all hot about stuff. But yet, I'm going to tell you something. I've had people say words. I've said them myself, I'm sure, on that. But I've had people say words and they supposedly were joking. But you don't know what I'm dealing with on the inside. We don't know what people are dealing with on the inside. See, I have some real insecurities about some things. Not all things, some things. But you don't know that. You don't know that. And there are certain things you could say to me, and I would be deeply hurt. Deeply hurt. And do you know what those words would do? They would play over and over and over in my mind, over and over, and I would think, it's true. It must be true. It must be true. And do you know what? It was a meddling meddler. Got in the middle of something that wasn't their business. And if it's not our business, the best thing we can do is see our way out of it. Never even get into it in the first place. And I tell you what, it is tempting at times when you hear a dispute going on or a conversation going on. And when you think you've got something to lend to that conversation because you want to. But we don't know the insecurities or the hurts. Today, many years ago, my mama died. And you know what? Normally, I'm okay with that. I wasn't this morning. I just wasn't. I wasn't. Now, nobody did any meddling or meddle anything like that. Nobody. But if you see someone upset, you don't always know what's going on. And so don't go over there and try to cheer them up with all these platitudes. You don't know what's going on in their heart. You don't know. I don't know. Now, words in season, words fitly spoken in season, that's different. But if I'm just trying to cheer you up because you're, I think Rose has said this before, look, I don't have to keep you fixed. You can't anyway. I don't have to keep you fixed. Someone asked her to smile, and she said, I don't know. I probably got the story wrong. But she said, look, I don't always feel like smiling. I've got things on my mind. It has nothing to do with you. And you know, but the thing is, I don't have to keep you fixed, but you don't have to keep me fixed. But I can keep my mouth shut. And sometimes maybe the Lord will give me words to speak and you words to speak. And so that is the meddling meddler. 1 Peter 4:15, we're just about through with all these different people. It says, but let none of you suffer. I thought this was amazing because the Lord was talking about the ones that suffer for righteousness' sake, so forth and so on. And then he goes to the other side of the plank and he says, but let none of you suffer. Peter was saying this, but let none of you suffer as a thief or some sort of criminal. And look what was attached right there by a comma. Or as a mischief maker, a meddler in the affairs of others, infringing on their rights. He threw us in, meddling meddlers, with some sort of criminal. He didn't even name what sort of criminal. It could have been a killer criminal, a murderer criminal. It could have been a thieving criminal. He did say thief. But the meddling meddler, that one that does that, is thrown in to that same category. Now, if you're going to suffer, don't suffer for that. Don't suffer being a meddling meddler. And so let's go to the last part now. And I think I'm going to finish up right here on time. Finish up smartly. And we're on verse 23 through 20 end. Like a common clay, and this is that hypocritical hypocrite. You know, the Lord does not want us to be hypocritical hypocrites. Say what you mean what you say. Or don't say. That would be a good thing. It says, like common clay vessel covered with a silver dross, making it appear silver when it really has no value, or burning lips, murmuring manipulative words, and a wicked heart. He who hates disguises it with his lips. He says the sweet nothings, because that's what they amount to, and he stores up deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously and kindly to conceal his malice, do not trust him, for 7 abominations are in his heart. Though his hatred covers itself with guile and deceit, his malevolence will be revealed openly before the assembly. Whoever digs a pit for another man's feet and falls in it, and he who rolls a stone up a hill to do mischief, I would think that would be a little stupid right there to get under a big old rock that you're rolling uphill. It will come back on him. And then a lying tongue hates those it wounds and crushes, and a flattering mouth works ruins. Now we're going to finish up with Mark 7, going to the New Testament, verse 6. And it says, but he said unto them, that's Jesus, excellently and truly, so that there will be no room for blame. Did Isaiah prophesy of you? And we're talking about the hypocritical hypocrite, the pretenders and hypocrites, as it stands written. These people, these hypocritical hypocrites, constantly honor me with their lips, but their hearts, it's all about the heart. Huh, Brother Mark, that's what you said. He preached about that. All about the heart. Their hearts hold off and are far distant from me. Their hearts are far distant from me. They say things that are pleasing to the ear to some people, but if you could look into that heart, you would see that it was deceitful above all things, and they were far off, far distance from the Lord. These are the hypocrites. In these days in which we live, there are hypocrites. There are people, there was in Jesus' day, you know, scribes and Pharisees, and that's who he talked about. But there are scribes and Pharisees nowadays as well. Those that, boy, they can preach a line, they can talk a line, but what they cannot do, they can't walk that line. They don't walk the line. They're what they do, their works really show them up for who they are and what they do. Are they doing what they do to further the kingdom of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Are they doing it to be seen of men and praised of men? And that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for your attention this morning. And I don't think any of us fall in any of these categories, so don't y'all worry about it now. Don't go out here worrying. Thank you.